Now, joining us via Skype is Professor of Russian and European Politics at the University of Kent, Richard Sakwa. Professor Sakwa, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Globe.
Yeah.
Now, surely the latest coming from Russia are truly unprecedented. What's your reaction?
Yes, it came as a surprise. We knew that he was going to give a speech today. The last two annual State of the Union addresses focused on military developments, domestic issues as well. But the fact that he added this idea of some constitutional change, even though there has been some discussion about it, it came as a bit of a shock, yes.
With President Putin announcing his plan to push through reforms that would make his successor even less powerful, clearly he's sending a message to the world. What message is this?
Well, he's sending a message above all to the country. If you remember, this speech today spent most of the time dealing with domestic issues, just a tiny bit on foreign policy. He talked a lot about demographic issues, about supporting families, about mortgages. He also talked about an important issue, and that is the relative stagnation of the economy. The investment rate, he kept arguing, has to go up from about 20% of GDP today to 25%. So this was the context. And then towards the middle part, the end of the speech, he then talks about this constitutional change. The message has been, I think, a bit misunderstood. This isn't so much about Putin himself staying in power after 2024. It's about ensuring that the system stays in place, and above all, the main leaders, the Putin elite, if you like, the head of the big corporations, big business and so on, that they will stay in place and that there will be continuity beyond it. So, yes, he will remain an influential figure because of the system he would have established. The presidency becomes a little less powerful, though still with quite a lot of powers, but the power shifts to some degree to the parliament and to the prime minister. So it's, he talked about it in terms of the society having become more mature, that the party system has become more mature, and he's got a point that this sort of manual management he's been doing since the year 2000 when he came to power, maybe, and there's been a lot of pressure. We saw the Moscow demonstrations this last summer in 2019 over the Moscow City Duma, that there was a sense of political stagnation. And what he's done is given certainly a sense of political dynamism now to the system with a constitutional referendum and then elections coming up after that.
Yeah, sure. And in the last few years, in the last couple of years, as a matter of fact, we've seen President Putin's approval ratings plummeting quite markedly, ostensibly as a result of his unpopular pension reforms. In as much as we don't have the finer details of these en masse resignations by his government, do we know if these pension reforms have anything to do with the resignations?
No. It's yes, the pension reform took place last year, and also the raising of VAT, that was also unpopular. But the pension reform has been largely accepted now. The government was not popular. Medvedev was not popular. So what he's done now is got rid of one of the most unpopular figures in the elite system, and he's appointed a stopgap person, a fellow called Mikhail Mishustin, the former head of the tax service. And it's obvious that Mishustin, who has actually been very, very effective, but almost certainly he's an interim figure to allow a new, more dynamic prime minister to emerge perhaps afterwards. So this is quite a subtle and quite an intelligent operation. As for Putin's popularity, yes, it did decline, but it's been on the way up in the last few months. So that wasn't so much an issue, but there is a sense of stagnation. Yes, and he understood that. The economy has been growing at about 1% per annum. And in this speech today, he argued, and he has done over the last few months, that the economy needs to grow as fast, if not faster, than the global average, which is about 3%. So this talk, or his plans today, are to deal with social issues, economic issues, and also the political succession issue.
Now, taking into cognizance that the Constitution essentially forbids President Putin from running for re-election in the year 2024, well, is there a possibility that he could perhaps install himself as Prime Minister?
Yes, that is certainly a possibility. But my view is that this isn't so much a way of keeping Putin in power. Yes, he'll remain certainly a power behind the throne, but it's a way of ensuring elite and systemic continuity rather than his own personal power. He may, of course, become prime minister and be quite legal to do so. They will almost certainly have a big majority in the next parliament, which is due to be elected in September 2021. And then, yes, it does give an option. And this means that the next 3 or 4 years, which have already become obsessed by what happens after 2024, it will mean that it will calm things down, that there will be a clear outcome. He could become prime minister or one of his close allies. But this change means that he wouldn't need to stay in power directly and to manage day-to-day affairs, because he's been doing it now for 20 years. And there's a sign that even he is becoming tired of managing endless elite disputes in economic policy and trying to get things done. So, yes, it gives the option for him to stay on, but there's no guarantee that this is what he's really planning to do.
All right, now, Professor, just picking up on your point, we're now dealing with two possible scenarios here. A, the possibility that he could be Prime Minister, or B, that he could lead the new State Council. Now, I want us to extend our analysis, if we can, to, the implications or the technical implications of both of these scenarios. Should he occupy one of those seats, would he still wield more power?
No. This succession, we can look at other examples. In Kazakhstan, for example, the former leader did move over to this sort of national leader position, so he wasn't directly involved in executive affairs. So Nursultan Nazarbayev managed that one. This is a slightly more, a slightly different variant of it. The State Council option, I don't think it wouldn't actually be an executive position. It would be the equivalent. It would mean that he would be able to oversee matters, but not necessarily manage them. Whereas the prime ministerial option would mean that he would be dealing with day-to-day affairs. And as we saw also in Singapore with Lee Kuan Yew, by the way, earlier. So there are precedents. And clearly, Putin's main concern is to ensure continuity and stability. Some people, of course, would like more radical change, but at the moment, it's the system that is, I think, and system and the top officialdom. Officialdom was getting a bit nervous. And so what they're most concerned about is to avoid intra-elite splits. The sign, if the succession hadn't been sorted so clearly, or the plan for the succession, the outlines of it is only we see so far, then you'd begin to see factions, you'd begin to see rivalries. This way, it sort of takes the steam out of the building tensions within the elite.
All right, let's talk about Russia without President Vladimir Putin. Would Russia still lead the stakes insofar as the world order or the US-led world order, whether he'll be prime minister at the time or leading the new state council, but would Russia still lead insofar as the world order?
Yes, that's an excellent point. That I've always argued that Putin reflects the consensus position of the Russian leadership and indeed population, that Russia should be a great power, that it's a permanent member of the P5, the permanent members of the Security Council in the United Nations. It's got a world role with discussions at the moment going on, for example, some sort of peace plan in Libya to try to sort out the final end game in the Syrian war, to try to calm things down over Iran, and endless other issues in which Russia and China and India, but China and Russia as permanent members of the UN Security Council, feel that the world order that was established at the end of the Cold War, the unipolar system, was inadequate. And that is why, of course, they established the BRICS organization, which South Africa is a member of course, also the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So this isn't so much an alternative world system. What they're saying is, yes, we are defending the international system. It's actually the Western United States which is challenging world order. They want, China, we know, they're signing up a deal today. They want globalization. They want an international system, but a system based on sovereign internationalism, not this liberal world order in which there is a dominant hegemonic power and everybody, in a sense, has to align themselves with. So this is why Russia, China, South Africa, India have aligned, not allied, but aligned on defense of sovereign powers, international powers, but I stress internationally. They will and plan to work together to achieve public good, working with the United States and with the West, so it's not anti-West, of course. But what Putin would say, and any successor of Putin will say exactly the same thing. So those who plan and hope that after Putin goes, that Russia will become more accommodation, a bit more like what they would say under Yeltsin or even Gorbachev, it won't happen. That Russia is now a major economic power, it's a major military power, and it now wants, like China does and India, they want now for the system to become, as they would say, multipolar, but still in defense of multilateral institutions.
Professor Richard Sakwa from the University of Kent joining us via Skype and sharing with us his reflections on the en masse resignations of the entire government of Russia. Thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. This is the Globe on SABC.